Okay, it is 5:47, and we will open this public planning meeting. So 7. Any declaration of interest or general nature thereof? Does anybody have an interest to declare? I see none. So we'll move forward with the purpose of the meeting, 3.1, which is actually, I'll read my blurb first and then we'll get into the first item. So this is what we do at every planning meeting. Personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected to form part of the minutes, which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, council members will have an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for the recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to myself, the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. We are not, I don't believe, making recommendations tonight. So we will we'll let the presentations happen first and then go from there. If a person or public body would have an ability to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Okay, so we'll move forward with the first item, which is 3.1 D14-2022-012, DeCroon in Engineering and Surveying, 482 Union Road. Madam Planner.
So I'm just going to find the right screen.
It's all right.
Okay. Through you, this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment to amend the zoning on the property at 482 Union Road. As you can see on the schedule in front of you, the whole property outlined in blue is the property. The area to be rezoned is a small area of the property shown in red. Notice for this evening's meeting was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act by mail out to all landowners within 120 meters of the property, as well as signage being posted on the property itself. This item was in front of council previously with respect to an application for lot addition. So the area in red is to be added to the property directly to the south, which is the Union Cemetery. The purpose of this amendment is to rezone the property from rural to an institutional zone, a site-specific institutional zone to recognize the required setback from the livestock facility on the abutting property, which the land is being severed from. There has been no public input in response to the notice of application on this, and I would note that this is on the council agenda later this evening for a recommendation.
Thank you. Any comments or questions in regard to this item on the agenda? I see none around the council table. Do we have any online? I don't see any hands. Please use the raise your hand function if you are on this meeting and you have any questions specifically, so that we can make sure that we identify you to allow you to speak. And I see no hands going up for this item. So we will move on to 3.2 D14-2022-009 Sheaf 322 Stratford Road.
Just give me 1 second. So through your worship, this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the property located at 322 Stratford Road. The application for zoning bylaw amendment is to allow for the use of the rooftop of the existing boat port for outdoor amenity space purposes. I have the full site plan on the screen in front of you for the property. I would note that the property has previously been subject to minor variances for both the house as well as the marine facility, as well as site plan control for the house development and the marine facility. The property is currently under construction with the house renovations that were approved through both minor variance and site plan control applications, which you can see on the screen in front of you. The subject of the zoning amendment right now is strictly for the use of the roof of the boat port for outdoor amenity space purposes. With respect to the application, notice for the public meeting was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. I would note that there has been one item of public input received that I circulated to council earlier today. This application is on the council agenda later this evening. However, given the detailed public submission that has been received, when we do get to the council agenda this evening, it will be the recommendation of staff that that item be deferred and withdrawn from the agenda to allow staff and the applicant the appropriate time to adequately address the responses or provide a response to the comments that were submitted today. It was a very detailed submission.
Okay, so I'm assuming we will move forward with
We
asking
will
questions.
move forward with the public meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so is there anything else you wanted to add before I start taking questions?
No.
Okay. So I have Councillor Grell. Are there any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Lackey. So go ahead, Councillor Grell.
Thank you. And through you, your worship, a couple of items did come to mind, and one I'd like to, for myself and maybe all of council, and so on, I'd like some clarity on the concept of, I'll use common law. And my understanding is that if you have a minor variance, it does not enter into what we might call common law. It's everything we do at Committee of Adjustment are one-offs. They are exceptions. Am I right in saying that? In other words, you can't say, hey, my neighbor has it, therefore I'm entitled to it. It doesn't work like that. Is that correct?
That's correct with respect
Thank
to
you.
Committee of Adjustment applications.
That is correct. Thank you. So nextly, I'm not a big fan of what the CRCA had to say about dealing with built form in our township. They were kind of stuffing it down our pipes. So I want to make it perfectly clear that I want built form to remain with us in this township at all times. Next, I didn't see any percentage coverage, because my understanding is also that if you build a boathouse and you put some amenity on the top, it is added to the percentage coverage of a property, and we're allowed 10%, correct?
No, that's not correct. A marine facility has a maximum permitted area, which is identified through the zoning bylaw. A variance was granted to the maximum permitted area of a marine facility to include that rooftop facility.
I have heard previously that footage of marine facilities was added to the percentage allowable on a lot.
That's not correct.
So under Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh case, that was not the case.
That was not the case.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you very much. And no, that's it. If we're going to defer that, that's great. But I would like to repeat that just because your neighbor has one doesn't allow you to have one unless it's passed through this council, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lackey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, mine's quite simple. On the notice of the public meeting, I don't know what the ramifications are, but I do believe we have an error on your mapping as far as you're calling Hill Island, Ash Island on the map.
That's correct. That was identified. But the map is correct in terms of the geographic area, and the description is correct. It was just a labeling error.
Nice catch there, Deputy Mayor Lackey.
So-
You don't drive to Ash Island, that's for sure.
Speaking.
Go ahead, Councilor.
And thank you out of turn, and thank you. I did notice that the CRCA comments provided are for another property.
Oh.
Under what I'm looking at right now, the CRCA comments were entered in as the previous last week or last month for the 81 Old River Road property.
Well, that will be brought forward and corrected when we bring forward an updated report.
Perfect.
Thank you.
These things are put in there to make sure people are paying attention. Thank you for paying attention. Okay, any other comments or questions? from around the council table? Okay, as far as the attendees online, does anybody have a question? If so, please raise your hand. And I don't have any hands raised at this point in time. So next item on the public planning meeting. No. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Does anybody have a question from the gallery? If so, please come forward to the mic. I've got nothing. Unless, go ahead. If you want to speak, you have to come to the mic. It's mainly because the Zoom meeting can't hear you otherwise.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I don't know if, I mean, it's a question or is it just, can it be some comments on, but on what we submitted? As we, okay, Chris Lundstrom, 24 Needles Eye Lane, property that's adjacent to the zoning amendment change that we were just discussing. So my question to you is, given that the deferment was suggested as far as the council's review of the information, which we understand it's on top of everything else, it's just it's another substantive document. Can we just ask a question now, or do you want us to kind of discuss that a little bit?
So it really, this isn't a place for discussion. It's asking for comments or questions.
Okay.
So this isn't to become a debate about what is proper, but if you have clarification question or asking if there's something to add to the comments and that you made earlier on the submission, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay, I did have a question. I only noticed today, we're a bit newbies at this, and that a staff report was already prepared before before today, which means that public comments could have come in anytime after the staff report was prepared. And unfortunately, it was done, I guess it was signed off on September 20th. And I realized looking into the council agenda that it was on the council agenda and we only saw that today. So is that just a question? Is that normal? I assume it's normal. And it's a bit unfortunate from my perspective that public comments, 20 days of the public commenting period, were not made available to the staff to be able to finalize that report. But I understand if it's processed, it's processed.
So I'm going to ask the planner to come forward because she can clarify the actual process. If I could just ask you to step aside for 2 seconds, and that way everybody in radio land can hear us.
Thank you, through you. I'm not sure about the date of September 20th because the staff report was only actually finalized a week ago. So there is typically time in there to receive public input if there is any, but just for clarification for everyone's understanding, when it comes to a zoning bylaw amendment application, typically if it's a relatively straightforward application, we have been bringing forward the staff report at the same time as the public meeting to help people through the process more expediently. However, as with what's happened this evening, if there's detailed public comments submitted, or if there's significant public comments that we didn't have the benefit of while we're preparing the staff report, staff always would ask council to defer an application if there is something of detail submitted that affects our opinion with respect to an application that's on the agenda. So you'll note on the agenda later this evening, on this public meeting agenda, there are some applications that have recommendations going to council this evening. There are some that are purely public meeting. And so we try to use discretion to understand which applications are more complex we anticipate input on, so that we have the benefit of having the public meeting and gathering that input. But again, we can't always predict what public input is going to come in. So we use our best judgment when we're bringing a consolidated report with a recommendation forward. And as I mentioned, in the event that there is substantive input, our position will always be that be deferred to allow more time for us to review that in more detail and bring a better opinion forward to council.
And just before you leave the podium, that's a perfect example of what happened with Eco Tree Care last week.
Yes,
So that was deferred for further information and was not brought to council for
that's correct.
recommendation. Question, just for further clarification, when minor variances are applied for, who gets notification of those minor variance applications once they're made?
Minor variance applications. So
Is there
With
something
respect to a
posted?
zoning amendment, it goes out to all property owners within 120 meters of the property. For a zoning or for a minor variance, it's 60 meters. So it's a smaller circulation distance for a minor variance. Those distances are dictated by the Planning Act, but it does go out to all landowners in the area. It's just a smaller distance for a minor variance.
So in this particular example, would Mr. Lindstrom have gotten a notice that this was coming forward?
Yes,
So you should have received something in the mail.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We did. It's just, and all the, the applicant's information, site plans, planning reports, et cetera. But not the staff report, which I don't think there is a procedure to announce that there is a staff report that was prepared on that particular issue.
No.
So that, but everything else was done as far as,
But-
including that, as far as I understand the process now. Yeah.
Okay, but it's a good thing to underline that if you receive something in the mail in regards to a neighbor who's having application for a zoning amendment or a minor variance, time is of the essence. And if you're looking to better understand it, whether it be contacting the planner, contacting the applicant, or making comments, even though there's not a staff report, your comments are valuable and they're heard. And it's important to have those comments, whether the staff report is done in advance or after, because it could help frame the report. That's the thing. That's why the comments are important.
Understood. This is not taken very lightly. It's a very awkward situation for us. We mull it over for days on end to decide how we're going to react to it. And unfortunately, between the holiday, between work, between travel, it was, we thought, do we dump this on people on Friday before Thanksgiving? Or do we just, at this point, wait till Monday morning and Tuesday morning rather. And so hopefully there's no next time, but next time we'll submit them earlier.
We appreciate your
Okay,
comments.
thank
just the
you very
same.
much.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Olkey has joined us and you have a further comment? Go
If
ahead.
you would allow me, Your Worship, thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Lindstrom for his comments. And I read that this afternoon, what you had proposed, and I thought it was extremely well written. And I'm fairly supportive of many things that you've said. I have a question for the planning department. If we did a deferral at council, do we come back? Is this the final public meeting? And the next meeting we have would be, it's put in front of council. Am I right in suggesting that?
so procedurally, because we've received input this evening, we aren't required to have another public meeting. However, Mr. Lindstrom would be provided notice of the item coming forward. In addition to that, I'd make sure that it was on a committee of the whole agenda where the public are able to speak to an application, as opposed to doing a full public notification to all landowners within 120 meters. So we would make sure that there is the opportunity in advance of the meeting to at least review the staff report. Through a notice of regular meeting, we always send out the link to the staff report for anybody that's provided input at a public meeting.
I think that would be more than fair, because if that wasn't the case, then I have a ton of questions and a lot of comment that I will defer until that time. And if new council, I'm assured it'll be a new council at that time, but I could speak publicly if that is the case, and I'm going to hold your feet to the fire on that one. So thank you very much, Marie.
Certainly, if I could just add, if you do have a bunch of questions, it might be helpful to provide those to me so we are able to address them in the comprehensive report when we bring
Shall
it
we
back to
start?
council.
Shall we
No,
start?
you can provide them in writing to me though, and we can put them in the report.
Maybe I'll drop into your office.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions from the council or from the attendees? I don't see any hands up. Okay, so we will move forward with, just want to make sure I haven't missed one. 3.3 D14-2022-011 Halpern at 62 Greer Point Lane. So Madam Planner.
And so through you, this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the property at 62 Greer Point Lane. The application is proposing to rezone the waterfront of the property to allow an expanded boathouse. So the existing boathouse would be removed and the boathouse to be constructed would be larger than the zoning bylaw contemplates. In addition, there would be rooftop amenity space, a sun deck on the roof of the boathouse. Application for this notice was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. I would note that there were a number of items of correspondence received today that were distributed to council in advance of the meeting, all in support of the application. This is not on the agenda this evening for a recommendation to council, as staff needed more time to complete the review of the application and confer with the Conservation Authority. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay. I have Councillor Garrell.
Thank you. And again, to you, your worship, I found it unusual. Was this presented to the Committee of Adjustment first before it has arrived at our table tonight?
No. So if I could just clarify, in some of the other situations where there's been minor variances beforehand, those minor variances have been strictly as it relates to the marine facility, say to increase the area or the width or those types of things. In this case, the proponent is asking to increase the area, increase the width, and do sun deck at the same time, all in one application. So a zoning amendment can do all of that without the need to go forward to the Committee of Adjustment first.
That may be the case, but we have a Committee of Adjustment because it's a body of people, a committee duly appointed by the township, and we rely on their opinions. And it struck me as if I was sitting on the Committee of Adjustment and was looking at the Halpern, I might suggest as an example, the conditions that they often put. We have a side lot setback here of 6 feet. It struck me as looking at the plan, which is wonderful, but there would be no reason in my mind that you couldn't move the whole issue over another 6 feet. Then you wouldn't be looking at a side lot. So a side lot variance. Therefore, the Committee of Adjustment could have put a condition on there, which we're accustomed to seeing. I certainly am, because I pay a lot of attention to that stuff. And I'm a little caught by having to do a dual function here. And I appreciate we're at end of council. I appreciate there might be a bit of a hurry up here, but it struck me as being a bit odd. Even if it's permissible, we've sort of cut the Committee of Adjustment out, and they are an important group, an important committee in this township. Thank you.
So if I could clarify, I absolutely agree the Committee of Adjustment is an important body. However, the Committee of Adjustment is only to look at minor variances, which you're correct in identifying that when you look at a setback or a yard or area, those can be minor variances. But when you look at the project as a whole, this is a zoning bylaw amendment because we're looking at this in one stage. You don't have to separate the two functions. There's no need to do that. In those cases, in the previous examples that you've cited, those were minor variances because someone came in and said, I want a little bit more length on my dock, or I want a little bit of a relief on my side yard setback. Cumulatively, when you look at what's proposed here, this is a zoning bylaw amendment because of the approvals that are being requested. This isn't cutting the Committee of Adjustment out of the procedure. This is putting a policy decision in front of council when we're looking at cumulatively the amendments to the bylaw that are being requested, as well as the request for the rooftop amenity space. So we're not cutting it. We're following the process as set out by the Planning Act. And part of the reason for that is it doesn't make sense to put this through a minor variance process and charge someone $800 for that process, and then put them through a zoning bylaw amendment process and charge them an additional fee for that, when the Planning Act contemplates this type of approval going through one process. So when staff look at an application through pre-consultation, we look at what's being proposed cumulatively, and we identify the process that an application needs to go to achieve what's being proposed. In this case, a zoning amendment is the appropriate approval.
If I may follow up, and I don't want to sound argumentative, however, it would strike me that the only reason that this process is being followed is that more and more people, because of the contractors telling them it's okay, that, hey, here's the new wiggle room to get yourself a flat top boathouse deck. And this seems to be the way we are going to approach it from here on in. Going to say, oh, because, and I appreciate, I don't want to have blanket approvals for flat top decks. There's a room in this township to be guarded. So therefore, I'm sensing that we are sidestepping the committee of adjustment because we saw what happened and that people got the planning gurus out there got clever and they said, oh, here's the way we're going to deal with this. We're going to go straight to the heart of it. We're going to go straight to the zoning amendment that ultimately will be required. And it appears to me that that is the policy that we've accepted here. And I'm a little uncomfortable with it. I appreciate that it's in the Planning Act maybe, but we are still sidestepping a committee of adjustment that is built exactly for that, to give the public input into this. And this council has enough work. I don't want to be out there looking at all of these, as does the committee of adjustment. They go and look at this stuff. I'm reading a report and have to sift through meters and feet, and it's challenging. So I'm a little uncomfortable. I just want to make that clear because that's what we've done here. Thank you.
So the only thing that I would add to the comments that are made earlier by both yourself and the planner is that if it was to come to committee of adjustment and they were to approve a minor variance on this particular, it still has to go through the zoning process. So it still has to come back to us and we still have final say.
Yep.
So I think I understand the process that you're asking us to undertake here. And I know during COVID, we were sort of the de facto committee of adjustment. And I agree. I don't want to be the committee of adjustment on we appreciate the input from the committee of adjustment. But in this particular case, I think I understand based on your explanation, Madam Planner, that this is a more comprehensive application and it's being put through this process because if one body is recommending, say, a minor variance, and then we have challenges with the zoning, but we've given the minor variance, it's counterproductive.
It's more comprehensive looking at it this way. A minor variance is to look at a minor variance from a provision of a zoning bylaw. A zoning amendment looks at the form and function of what's proposed for the property. There's different tests for the two approvals. It's more comprehensive to do it through a zoning amendment and have council's eyes on it from a policy perspective.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to our planner. Director Venditti, I apologize. Why do we not have comments from the CRCA at this point?
Through you, Your Worship, we don't have CRCA comments at this point because there's been a number of turnovers in staff, a high volume, and they are reviewing the application and we'll work with them going forward on it.
Thank you for the clarification. So are there any comments or questions, any further comments or questions from council before I go to the public? Seeing none here in the council chambers, and there are no hands up on the screen. We'll move forward with planning report SR-144-22 application for zoning amendment 62 Greer Point Lane to rezone waterfront to allow a sun deck on the roof of a new boathouse and increase the permitted area and width from a marine facility and reduce the side yard setback from the projected property line, which
That's the one we just did. We're moving on to the
right.
next.
I have to announce them because they're two separate items on my agenda. So we've had the discussion on this already because of the previous report, unless there's further questions. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Grow.
And thank you. And through your worship, one more time, I'm going to push the point here. So when we allow people to go into public property, which is waterfront, which is land underwater, controlled by the Ministry of Natural Resources, when we allow people to do that, we establish the size of boathouses. it strikes me that the triangle's getting turned upside down here a little bit. Because now people are, and it's being driven by contractors, that people are suggesting, I only need a boathouse for my boat and my canoe or my 2 canoes, whatever. But now we're going toward, oh no, I can get living space, or pardon me, amenity space out there. Therefore, people are going max out on waterfronts. And I just wonder, is that's a trend? I see it as a trend, and it's happening rather quickly. And I just wonder, how does planning deal with that? We have a maximum size of marine facilities, which seems reasonable to me. And you can take it to committee of adjustment to expand it. But once again, I'm getting to the point, people are increasing their use of public space by putting amenities on top of decks. And we have to be cautious. This is more a statement, I suppose, and I apologize for that. But this council and this township should be somewhat careful about how we are dealing with that. In some cases, it's extremely appropriate. In some cases, I feel it is not. And I don't want to be overrun by people going and contractors suggesting to people, oh my goodness, we should just do X. And now you'll have this amenity space out there, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's happening here. It's as clear as mud. So thank you for the time to make a comment. Thank you.
Go ahead.
If I could just add to what you said there, Councillor Gurell, if you recall, it was a number of months ago, but council did pass a resolution asking planning staff to look into policies and provisions around marine facilities and rooftop amenity space and bring a report forward. We've done some research, but given current workloads, haven't had the opportunity to bring that report back. I don't have specific timing at this point, but that work is underway.
Great. Councillor Jameson, go ahead.
Your worship, just to underline what the planner is saying, we did say we were going to ask staff to do this. And I appreciate that the overwhelming workload is going to slow this down. On the other hand, there was a discussion about putting a moratorium on passing anything in the meantime, which was not entertained at the time. I'm not going to propose that we do that, but I do think we should keep in mind exactly what Councillor Grell is saying, your worship, that we need to be prudent about what is actually going on in the public spaces. Thank you.
Okay. So that's duly noted. So no other hands up on the screen, no hands up in the gallery. So we'll move forward with 3.5 D14-2022-013 Ferguson/Seaway Design Group 915 Woodridge Lane. So Madam Planner.
Thank you. So through you, this is a public meeting for an application for zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property to convert the existing workshop into a bunkie. The bunkie exceeds the size allowable under the existing zoning bylaw. And so the application is being brought forward to amend the zoning to allow for the structure to be converted. Notice was advertised in accordance with the Planning Act. There has been no response with respect, or no public input with respect to the notice of public meeting that was sent out. I would note that this is not on the council agenda for a recommendation this evening, because when we were out on site, there were a few other items identified that may need to be addressed through the zoning bylaw amendment. So staff are holding the public meeting this evening and will bring a report forward to council at a later date.
Okay. Any comments or questions in regards to this? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Just to ask, I'm sure I know the answer, but the actual configuration of the building is not going to change. They're
No, that's correct. The
working
building's-
within the, and the second thing is this anticipating an Airbnb?
I can't speak to that. It is simply to be a sleeping cabin, so it's not going to have all of the facilities that would comprise a separate dwelling unit. With respect to whether the property is used as a personal occupancy or a rental, I can't speak to that.
Thank you.
Okay, comments or questions? Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Burrow.
I don't think I saw a report here from the health unit. As bathroom, I presume was going to be in that bunkie.
Actually, that would fall within the purview of township staff now, and so that'll be
As
looked
of
at through
October
the
1st.
building permit process.
Yeah, okay, because typically we have to make sure they have their septic will have the capacity to.
That's
Put that
correct.
there.
And actually, the plot plan that's on the screen does show the connection to the septic bed for the bunkie. So there would be facilities within it.
So it would be up to us to verify that the facilities have enough capacity to. handle
That's
that.
correct.
Fair enough. Council Grow.
And thank you through your worship. And just a quick, the definition of a bunkie one more time for a poor man like myself.
It's a one-story sleeping cabin with a maximum, I can't remember the maximum area off of the top of my head. I think
Sure.
it's 30 square meters.
Mhm.
So this would exceed the area that's
No
required.
kitchen.
It does not have kitchen facilities.
So you
It
can have a
can have
washroom.
sanitary facilities, but no kitchen
So
facilities.
that sanitary could either be hooked into your septic or potentially it could be one of those chemical type toilets, whatever they're.
If
now
it meets
called.
the requirements of building code, yes.
Yeah, and it meets the requirements of building code. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions in regards to this application? Go ahead, Counselor Maybe.
Thank you, Worshipman, through you. As discussed in the septic system, this particular plot plan does show a brand new septic system that has been put in, and the red lines do come from the bunkie to a holding tank and then pumped up to the new field. So it probably is very adequate for the requirements. And to Director of Planning, you did mention about 30 square meters as a bunkie. Is this over that? I can't see the measurements on this.
It is actually, it's 50 square meters.
Okay, so just over it. So
Yes.
thank you.
But it's because it's an existing facility, that's why they're asking for the amendment. Okay. Any comments or questions from the gallery? Any comments or questions from the attendees on the meeting? Please raise your hand. Okay, no hands are raised. And 3.6 is the same thing. So planning report SR-145-22, application for zoning amendment. Oh, sorry, wrong. Yeah, no, sorry. 915 Woodridge Lane. It's a long day already. To allow the conversion of an existing garage to a sleeping cabin. So this is the planning report versus the development report.
That's correct.
So we've already discussed that, but it is a separate item on the agenda, so required to be read. If there's any other comments or questions, seeing none, we'll move forward with adjournment, and the motion to adjourn comes from Counselor Maybe, seconded by Counselor Jameson, that the public meeting adjourn at 6:25. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried.